Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. Hey everybody, I'm Hailey and I'm here with another Hailey. So we are going to talk today about your messaging must-haves and how you can prepare for your first or next online launch. Hailey, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Hailey. It's so fun and weird saying the same name, but I'm so excited to be here. I am a copywriter, so I really help people make more money with their messaging. And I love serving online coaches, health and wellness, mindset, all things related. So really excited to be here today.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you because I cannot tell you how many times I have had clients who say, I want to say I help everybody and I want to, I just want to say I help you with your health, or I don't want to make any promises that seem too specific because I just don't know yet. And so I want to ask you a little bit about that first. So when somebody is, maybe they've come up with, they want to do private coaching program and they want it to, be for moms or something like that. But maybe they're a little hesitant on, okay, how do I start communicating and articulating the benefits of what I do in this launch? What would you say are some things they need to consider and think about when they're getting ready to create launch assets, things like emails and content and stuff like that?
I love that you started there because that's really where you want to start. So I always say it's all about the right offer in front of the right audience with the right messaging. So starting with really, who is your audience? Who do you want to serve? Who lights you up the most to serve? And there are so many people out there that are like, I don't want to leave anyone out, or I love to serve everyone. And the more you talk to everyone, the more you're talking to no one. So, as people are starting out, it can be hard to narrow down, to niche down, because you might not know who you love to serve yet, and you're really just figuring that out. So starting with a little bit broader audience is fine. But what I found helpful in my own business and working with clients is kind of choosing one person to write to. So thinking of, who has been your most favorite client you've ever worked with before, and then just writing it down. What is their name? Who are they? What do they do? What do they struggle with? What are some of the pain points that they have that are based around your offer? And then what is the transformation that your offer is going to create for them? What are some results that you're going to get? And I think writing all of that down is really helpful, and then putting that into your messaging as you're working on all the things going out to your audience.
Mm-hmm. I like that idea about thinking about that one person. I don't know if you've ever heard of, I forgot the network, the shopping network or something, but they are like known for, I read it in some book that they have this our lady is named Karen, and here's Karen's info, and here's what Karen does as her hobbies, and we got to speak to Karen, and they make their decisions always based on Karen. So one of the questions I want to ask you though about is transformation in our programs. So I think a lot of people struggle when they're starting out to come up with what is the transformation, or what is the promise that I'm making in my program. And they're afraid they don't want to make a false promise. They also don't want to make a promise that somebody doesn't want. And then they don't want to make a promise that if somebody else wants something else that they could also deliver on, they're worried about missing out. So what would you say about how do you start to come up with a promise, and can you, or a transformation, as you say, and can you maybe give some examples that somebody could tangibly understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing that I say to those starting out, if you don't know the transformation or you don't know what your client really wants, ask them. So there's a process that I do with some of my clients if they are just kind of starting out or they're not really sure what's that transformation. I have a questionnaire that we use that they can schedule interviews, live interviews with someone that might be their ideal client. So talking with them, asking them exactly those questions. What are their struggles? What do they want to see happen? What are the results? Kind of what does their future look like? What are their future goals? And then kind of creating your offer around it, creating your program around what they really want, because there's nothing more frustrating than creating something, putting it out there, and then nobody buys it. Because it takes so much time and so much energy and money and resources to do a launch and to put that out there, that you really want to make sure it's the right offer. So I do suggest just sitting down with people and asking them, even if they're not a potential client, even if it's somebody that's just that you'd love to serve, that really fits your market. I would suggest doing that for sure.
Absolutely. I have a whole section in my program called Market Research and this all was because when I first started my business, young and naive, I wrote a 200-page ebook that I thought was so cool and so good, and nobody wanted it. And I was like, of course they didn't. Who wants to read a 200-page ebook about what I wrote about? But I learned from that, and then I didn't make any other programs going forward or offers going forward without getting feedback. And every single day you can be getting feedback. If you guys are listening to this podcast, like Hailey said, you could do interviews, which is a really great idea. But you could also, like for me, when people join my Facebook group, we ask them, what's your top goal for this group? Or like, what are you trying to do in your business right now? And we're getting constant input about what do they want videos on? What do they want content on, right? And the other thing you said is really asking those questions. So can you give an example, though, of what would be like a transformation for a program that you think is good? And how do you make it unique? Because in other words, you could just say, get healthy or like, drop 10 pounds. But then how do you make it more unique?
Definitely. And I think making it unique to you. So that's one of the other things that I think is so important when you are looking for the right offer and your messaging is, how are you different than everyone else? How is your offer different? So not just kind of what they get, whether it's a healthy eating plan or how to practice mindful eating or stress management, tips that you can give them, but what is something that's not tangible? So they'll create better relationships with family members. They'll be able to have more energy in the day. They won't wake up feeling so foggy and groggy or, get upset with their kids after 2 minutes of whining. It's something where it's really creating that transformation in their whole life, not just the benefits that they're getting out of it. So I kind of strive to think a little bit beyond the tangible and how it's creating that life transformation.
Nice. Yes. So what's interesting is you listed some, if they're being more mindful and stuff. I always call those tools. Those are tools you teach them. You teach them healthy habits. You help them, start exercising, etc. But what's the so what of that? And that's what you're talking about. Like relationships are better. They're not as snappy with their kids, right? So what about though, where people say, well, yeah, I'm saying that stuff, but people don't think it's valuable. Like they only think, I hear this a lot. Like, well, it's easy for someone to say, well, you're going to make more money and then people will buy your program. Because if they see it as like an investment in that sense, they're going to be more likely. But if it's like health which I think is like way more important than business, but that's just me. People might not value it as much or whatever. So what do you say to that, where people say like those intangibles, unless it's like you're going to make more money or you're going to be able to retire or something, they feel like it's not good enough or something like that.
So there's a couple of things I say always to use in your messaging, and that could be social proof. So whether it's people that you've had past clients, if they send you emails of like, oh my gosh, this was so great, this was life-changing, or even just the small things, those small steps, if they're just starting out, screenshot those or post on social media, screenshot those. Always be asking your clients for feedback, whether it's through email or conversation. So including that, but then also using belief shifting. So there's a whole, I could go on forever about belief shifting, but using that in your message can be really important. And it's just because it can be used for bad. People can use it in the wrong way, but it's when it's used in the right way, it helps people see what that transformation could be. So an easy one is always like, well, if you invested this much on health coaching rather than spending $6 a day on a Starbucks latte, so kind of just shifting that belief of what is that investment really worth to them? And there's so many different forms of doing it, but just igniting that in your messaging can be really helpful in getting them to shift that belief, see the other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So belief shifting content and copy. So not just saying, hey, you're going to have better relationships, you're going to be less snappy at your kids, but actually saying things like, what if you could redirect that $6 you're spending on Starbucks, getting more sugar cravings, causing you to have an energy crash, blah, 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 into your health and wellness and having more energy and feeling younger and getting more done with your time during the day, which will help your career perform. It's like, tying it to that can be really good. What's another belief shift example maybe that, just because I think people thrive really well if they kind of understand. So like what could be a belief that maybe they want to overcome in their content or copy?
So I'm trying to think here. So if we go back to, maybe those, eating habits, changing habits. So they could be like, well, I've tried this before and it hasn't worked. I've done this a million times and it hasn't worked. But then on the other side, showing them maybe it hasn't worked yet because of this, because you haven't had this support around you, the accountability around you, the things that they'll get with your program of how they might kind of start shifting and seeing, well, okay, it hasn't worked before because maybe I didn't do this, but I could do this and that could work. So just getting them to look at it through a different lens.
Yeah. And what I like about this too is it's important to not ignore what's going on in their heads. So a lot of times it's nice to just say the benefits and have nice, pleasant content. But if you're never hitting on the big pain points or the reasons why they haven't taken action already and what's going on as far as their fears and concerns and hesitations, then they're definitely going to stay in, well, that's not for me or I'm not interested, right? So what about when it comes to planning a launch? What kind of writing assets do people need to be thinking about?
So there's a couple different kinds of launches that we have here. And it can be scary and people think, oh, I don't have an online course, so I have nothing to launch, or I don't have a huge program that I need to launch. But really, you can launch a new service. You can launch a service that you've had before, but maybe you want to get more eyeballs on it. I think one thing is people think they don't have anything to launch or no one's going to care. But if you don't talk about it, if you don't put it out there, if you're not active in talking about it, no one is going to care about it. So I always just get people thinking by, okay, what are the services they have to offer? What are their, goals for the year? What's something they want to improve on, get out to the world, and then start there. So there's a couple different types of launches and things that the messaging you really want to look at is your sales page. Always having a sales page that talks about exactly what your offer is. And then digging in, like you said, what are the pains they're having, the struggles, the challenges, but then painting a picture of what's possible after working with you, after going through the service or your program that you're offering, and then just kind of listing out those benefits, tangible, intangible, all of that on the sales page. So the more expensive your offer, the longer you're going to want your sales page to be. But then you're also going to want social media posts. So really choosing the channel that you're most active on, and really, where is your audience? So if your audience isn't on TikTok, I wouldn't suggest focusing all your time on TikTok. But if your audience is, then that's really where you want to put. So back to, like you said, market research. Where does your audience hang out? And then email. Email is so, so, so important. For growing a business, for any business, email marketing is huge. So building your list up to that. So whether you have a lead magnet on your page, and a lot of times, like you said, you put out a 200-page ebook. I did the same thing. I threw out like 6 different lead magnets and hoping that something would stick, where it's like, okay, let's ask what our audience wants, put 1 or 2 really good things out. And they can be super simple, like a checklist or a 2-page PDF. Just as long as you have a way to collect names and add to your list. So email, sales page, and then social media copy are really the important messaging pieces for a launch.
Awesome tips. And one thing I want to ask you about this with the content piece is, I know a lot of people who get really positive feedback on their content, a lot of supportive comments, a lot of people who are like, wow, this is so inspiring, but they really struggle with connecting it back. So their value posts and stuff, connecting it back to how people can work with them, or creating that actual conversion with their content to the next step. So any tips about when you're creating content, how do you, in a solid way, like, to have, not just have nice to have content that's valuable, but also reminding people how they can work with you and having good calls to action and stuff like that. Any tips on that?
I think just making sure that all roads lead to working with you. So if they're putting out that content, not just putting out the content, but a way that, does it lead back to your blog? Does it lead back to your podcast? Does it lead to a connection call with you? And then be engaging with their posts. So if someone comments, rather than just liking it or, doing a reaction, actually commenting back, but then even going one step further and sending them a DM and, saying, I noticed you like this. What did you like about it? How did you find me? Really, that all shouldn't be in one message, but just creating that conversation with people, because I think the more that you build connection, the more you're building that trust and credibility and expertise. And especially for those just starting out, that's so important. That connection piece is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think that content only gets you so far. It nurtures people, but really the best thing you can do, especially if you're new, is take the initiative and be interacting with the people who are paying attention to your content, because the conversations are what create the conversions. So one of the things I want to ask you as well is, what are some common mistakes you see in planning your launch content, and in like your sales page and emails and things like that?
Where do I start? So I think some of the mistakes that I see are, we'll start with the sales page. So if the sales page, they start with, here's my offer. And then, just listing, what is the offer? What do you get? So not adding in, like we talked about, those pains and struggles, not showing what the results they're going to get. I think that can be really hard for people. And then just making sure that your headlines throughout your page are results oriented. What is the result? What is the benefit? Because I think now it's like a half a second or something that we have before somebody's like stays or goes off your website. So you want to make sure that page is captivating the whole way through, but then also several places on there that they can take action, so that they can buy your offer. So right on the top, right below your headline, and then throughout your page, because you want them to have the easiest route to saying yes that they can once you've sold them. And then just in the email sequences. So I see people being like, well, I sent out 3 emails and I didn't have anyone buy. Or I sent out 3 emails and I had only one person. Well, I don't know about you, but I get hundreds of sales emails every day in my email. So you're going to have to send more in order to stand out. And some people are like, I feel like I'm yelling, or I feel like I'm, just being so noisy, but we see so much noise. So the more that you're in front of someone, the better. But also making sure that every email you're sending is providing some sort of value, that it's talking about your launch, that maybe you're offering special bonuses throughout that you can only get at this certain time period, or you're sharing case studies and testimonials. Frequently asked questions. Those are huge to have on your sales page in your emails, because a question is really an objection that someone has. So by answering some of those questions around money and time, you're kind of helping them overcome that objection. So those are really the big ones that I would say.
Yes, absolutely. Very good tips. And I can say for anybody watching this, one of the things that I do with clients is I have a program pitch worksheet and like the email templates for a launch and stuff, but we adapt it to your own voice on all that. But at the same time, Hailey knows things that sometimes it's good to have like someone who's a copywriter who understands just copy, because copy in and of itself is a very important skill in business that directly is tied to your marketing and sales. And so, even though I have a background in copy because I used to work in marketing for a lot of startups, but it's not like that's the only thing I do all day. And I know that a copywriter is, someone who could look at your copy or look at your assets even deeper and really make sure it's aligned with, your ideal clients. So what are some things as a copywriter that you've learned are big, maybe, I guess, musts in, like any musts you haven't covered yet? Like just, I guess, with headlines or with, I don't know, anything you want to share about that?
So I think kind of those must have within, headlines, I guess, is a big one, because your headlines can be used over and over again. So they can be used as a headline on your sales page, as a subject line on your email, as something that you're writing about on social media. So you can use those over again, but making sure that they're action oriented or results oriented. But I have some different like headline templates that I provide where it's kind of like, get healthy in 30 days or less, like something that's super tangible, super easy for someone to gravitate to. Different templates that you can use that really would kind of just get that immediate buy-in, or that immediate like eyes on your page, I want to learn more.
Yes, absolutely. What about when you think, let's say somebody's like, I feel like my content is not my voice or not my style. Like, I don't really know. I'm kind of just like stating the benefits, but it's kind of boring, or I feel like it's kind of salesy, or I feel like what do you do to help people find their own, zest, I guess?
Yes. And I think that's so hard because, a lot of us deal with imposter syndrome, or, I'm writing this and I want to make sure it sounds perfect to my clients. And, even when I started copywriting, it's like I had to unlearn some grammar and like, just reverse the way my brain thought, because you want your copy to sound like how you talk. So a couple tips that I give is always read it out loud. Before you go live, before you hit send or post, like read it out loud. If it sounds funny out loud to you, chances are it's going to sound funny to whoever's reading it. And then write like you're writing to a friend. So, again, either pick that person, that favorite client that you worked with, or just like you're talking to a friend, write to them, because chances are that's going to sound more like you. It's going to be more natural. And then you can go back through and tighten it up to, how you want your audience to see it. But just starting with that, I think really can help people kind of find their voice and who they are.
Love that. Yes. And don't have big, giant, chunky paragraphs.
Yes.
Yes.
Not at all.
Or teeny tiny font that people can't read.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So, and one just side note for people listening here, if you're struggling with case studies, we actually have an episode about case studies and testimonials. It's HaileyRowe.com/case-studies. But let me ask you about case studies though, because I think sometimes people are like, well, I'm still new and I don't have tons of examples to give yet. What could somebody do with either storytelling or just in general, like to incorporate that kind of stuff, but maybe they don't have a ton. Maybe they only have one or something like that.
And I think that's okay because, having one, utilizing it, making sure that it's one good one that you can get out there, that people have saw transformation. But then also most times, we're best positioned to serve who we once were. So maybe, they've gone through their own struggles and they've overcome it, by doing what they're teaching. So sharing their own story can be really beneficial too, because storytelling is huge and it makes people feel like they can relate to you, but you've been able to overcome it. So I think that's really huge, and just being able to tell your own story.
Absolutely. When somebody tells their own story, though, I find that sometimes they put in details they don't maybe need to, or they don't put in details, and then it's just like this really bland story. So any advice on how does somebody come up with explain their story in a way that's clear, but also, captivating? Any tips there?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And storytelling, that's a whole nother thing that we could go on forever about, but storytelling is so important. I do have some stuff on my blog for it, but starting with this story is really painting a very vivid picture. So, what you've seen, what you felt, what you're hearing. So really having all of those senses in there so that people really can kind of feel like they're in the story almost. So when you're telling a story, and it's a good story, people are kind of putting themselves in your shoes. They're starting to think about, without even knowing it, it kind of is like, wow, this is me. I can see myself here. And they're being able to relate with you. So just kind of painting the most vivid picture. But again, and going back, reading it through, like, is this too long? Do I need all of this? Kind of, or even bouncing it off your business friend or your friend or your coach, to making sure that it's really resonating with people.
Awesome. Oh, I love it. Okay. So yeah, we could go down rabbit holes. We could do an episode with Hailey on every single part of this, like just the emails, just the sales page, all the things. But where can people check out your blog and check you out and connect with you as well?
Yes. So my business is The Copy Shift. So you can find me at thecopyshift.com. My blog is on my website. All my social links are on there. So yeah, you can just find me at thecopyshift.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming today. Love the valuable tips. One thing that really stuck with me is write like you're writing to a friend. That's a good reminder. Or your favorite client of all time. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.